This is the story of an ordinary college student who set out on a hike along the Appalachian Trail and disappeared for 3 years. It is the story of how hundreds of people searched for her and did not find her, and of how a chance discovery by a cave explorer brought the truth to light, a truth that is still difficult to believe even today. Prepare to learn about survival under conditions that would break most of us, and about how the thin line between life and death sometimes depends on a single случайный person. Lauren Parks was 22 years old. She was a third-year biology student at the University of Richmond, specializing in botany. She was petite and athletic, with dark hair usually tied back in a ponytail. She was the kind of person who preferred weekends in the woods to parties in the college dorms. She grew up in a middle-class suburb of Richmond. Her father was an engineer, and her mother was a schoolteacher. She was their only child. From early childhood, Lauren had been passionate about hiking. Her parents often took her to national parks on weekends. By the age of 22, she had completed more than 30 hikes, including several multi-day trips in the mountains. Lauren was not a reckless hiker. She knew safety rules and always carried a map and a compass, even though she also used a GPS device. She could start a fire in any weather, knew edible plants, and was trained in first aid. Her backpack was well equipped: a tent, a sleeping bag, a stove, food for 5 days, a water filter, a first aid kit, a knife, a signal whistle, and a rain jacket. On July 10, 2010, she drove from Richmond to West Virginia. The route was not considered difficult. A section of the Appalachian Trail in the Monongahela National Forest, approximately 60 kilometers long. The plan was simple: 3 days on foot with overnight stays in a tent, then a return to her car. She had completed this section 2 years earlier and knew the trail well. Lauren left her car in the parking area at the trail entrance, a small gravel lot for about 10 cars along Highway 133, known as the Seneca Creek Trailhead. She signed the logbook at the information board, a mandatory procedure for all hikers. She wrote her name, the date, her planned route, and her return date, July 13th. The last message she sent to her friend was on the evening of July 11th at around 9 p.m. The text was brief: "I am camping by the creek. Tomorrow I head for the pass. The signal is weak, but everything is fine." After that, Lauren's phone was no longer reachable. On July 13th, the day she was supposed to return, her friend began calling her. The phone was either turned off or out of coverage. That evening, the friend called Lauren's parents. They tried calling as well, without success. On the morning of July 14th, Lauren's father drove to the Seneca Creek Trailhead. His daughter's car was still parked in the same spot. The hood was cold, the interior was clean, and there were no signs of a struggle or a break-in. The keys, of course, were with Lauren. At 8 a.m., he called the park rangers. At 9 a.m., the search operation began. The search was led by Sergeant David Holmes from the Randolph County Sheriff's Office. He was 48 years old, with 26 years of service, including 12 years in search and rescue operations. He was stocky, with gray stubble and a worn uniform. He spoke slowly, clearly, and without unnecessary words. The operation involved 24 service rangers, 15 local volunteer search and rescue members, and 3 dog handlers with their dogs. On the second day, a Coast Guard helicopter was brought in. At first, the obvious locations were checked. The trail runs along Seneca Creek and then climbs towards Spruce Knob Pass, at an elevation of about 1,200 meters. The route is marked with white blazes on trees, making it difficult to get lost. Along the trail are several designated campsites, cleared areas with fire pits and simple toilets. The dogs picked up Lauren's scent near the parking lot. The trail led about 3 kilometers along the path. Then it stopped. It simply vanished, as if Lauren had disappeared into thin air. This was the first strange detail. The lead handler, a woman in her 50s with a German shepherd named Rex, said to Holmes, "I have never seen anything like this. Usually a trail is lost near water or on rocks. Here, it is a dirt path." The scent should have continued. Holmes ordered the search area expanded. Teams combed the forest within a 5-kilometer radius of the trail. They checked ravines, streams, and rocky outcrops. They searched for signs of a tent, a campfire, or any trace of a campsite. They found nothing. For 2 days, a helicopter flew over the area. Thermal imaging equipment was used, without success. The forest there is dense and old, with tall spruce and maple trees. Visibility from the air is poor. However, if Lauren had been injured or dead in an open area, she would have been seen. On the 4th day, they found her backpack. It was lying in the bushes about 100 meters from the trail, in a small depression between the hills. The backpack was open, and its contents were scattered around. The tent, sleeping bag, stove, and food supplies were all there. But several items were missing: the knife, the flashlight, the first aid kit, and the water bottles. Her phone was found nearby. It was turned off. The battery was completely drained. The last recorded signal dated back to July 11th at 9:03 p.m., registered by a cell tower located 20 kilometers away. Holmes examined the discovery site. There were no signs of a struggle. The ground was not disturbed, and no branches were broken. The backpack lay as if it had simply been dropped or thrown aside. There were no traces of blood and no signs of animal activity. Crime scene technicians collected the backpack and its contents. The analysis revealed only Lauren's own fingerprints and natural contamination, such as dirt and plant fibers. Nothing suspicious was found. The search continued for another 10 days. Volunteers from neighboring counties joined in, along with students from the university where Lauren studied and her classmates. At peak times, more than 100 people were working in the forest. They searched more than 50 square kilometers. All caves in the area were checked. There were about 20 of them. Most were shallow, approximately 10 to 15 meters deep. Abandoned forest cabins, old observation towers, and hunting lodges were also examined. Nothing was found. On July 27th, the official search was suspended. Holmes called a press conference. He said, "In essence, we have done everything within our power. All available resources have been exhausted. Unfortunately, Miss Parks has not been found. The case remains open. We will continue to follow up on any new leads." Lauren's parents did not give up. Her father hired a private investigator. Her mother printed flyers with her daughter's photograph and posted them throughout West Virginia. They offered a reward of $100,000. Dozens of people called in. They claimed they had seen a girl resembling Lauren at a parking lot near Charleston, at a gas station in Ohio, or on a bus headed for Pittsburgh. Every lead was checked. All of them turned out to be false. Gradually, public interest faded. The media shifted their attention to other news. Volunteers returned to their own lives. The parents continued searching on their own, coming to the forest every weekend. They walked the trail and called out their daughter's name. No one answered. By the fall of 2010, the main theory among investigators was that Lauren had wandered off the trail, fallen into a ravine, or slipped into a hidden crevice and died from her injuries. Her body could have been washed away by summer rains or carried off by animals. The forest is vast, and finding a body there is extremely difficult. An alternative theory was an attack by a bear or a mountain lion. However, no such attacks were recorded that season, and no animal tracks were found near the backpack. A third theory, discussed quietly, was voluntary disappearance. Perhaps Lauren had personal problems that no one knew about. Perhaps she wanted to start a new life. This theory was categorically rejected by her parents. A fourth theory, abduction, was considered but quickly dismissed. The area was too remote, and there were too few people. Maniacs do not typically hunt well-prepared hikers in national parks. The case gradually went cold. The file was placed on a shelf in the office of the Randolph County Sheriff. Lauren Parks was officially listed as missing. Mark Tennyson was 36 years old, a professional cave explorer and amateur geologist from Pittsburgh. He was tall and slim, with long hair tied back in a knot. By profession, he worked as an engineer for a construction company, but he spent every vacation exploring caves. He specialized in the study of little-known cave systems in the Appalachians. He searched for new entrances, created maps, and took photographs. Over 10 years, he had explored more than 200 caves in West Virginia, Kentucky, and Pennsylvania. On August 7, 2013, Mark Tennyson arrived in the area of Monongahela National Forest. His goal was simple. He wanted to check several potential cave entrances that a ranger friend had told him about. The coordinates were only approximate, but Tennyson was good at navigation. He followed an old forest road that had long since been overgrown with grass. The road led to an abandoned logging station that had been in operation during the 1970s. Now, only the concrete foundations of the buildings and rusty rail tracks remained. About 2 kilometers from the main trail, on the slope of a hill, Tennyson noticed something unusual: a moss-covered rock ledge. Under normal circumstances, he would have walked past it, but something caught his attention. The shape was too regular, almost perfectly square. He stepped closer. Beneath the moss was metal, a hatch, about 1 meter across, made of thick steel and heavily rusted. The hinges were clogged with dirt, but the structure was clearly man-made. Tennyson brushed the moss aside with his hands. Faded letters painted on the surface of the hatch became visible. FS-17. There were no other markings. He tried to open the hatch. For the first few minutes, it did not move. Tennyson pulled a tire iron from his backpack, wedged it into the gap, and leaned on it with his full weight. The metal creaked. Then the hatch suddenly gave way and swung open. A wave of stale, musty air poured out of the opening. Tennyson turned on his flashlight and shined it downward. Inside was a concrete shaft with a metal ladder leading 8 to 10 meters underground. The walls were damp and covered with mold. Below, it was completely dark. Tennyson climbed down. At the bottom, the shaft opened into a corridor, also made of concrete. Narrow, with a low ceiling. The floor was flat, with puddles in places. The air was heavy, but breathable. The corridor ran straight for about 20 meters and then turned to the right. Beyond the turn was a metal door, massive, nearly 10 centimeters thick, with a large wheel mechanism in the center, like something from a submarine. Tennyson turned the wheel. The door opened with difficulty, the hinges stiff with rust. Behind it was a room. It was a bunker, an old military bunker from the Cold War era. Tennyson had seen structures like this before. In the 1950s and 1960s, similar shelters had been built across the country. Most were abandoned after the end of the Cold War, and many were never even added to official records. The room was rectangular, approximately 6 by 10 meters, with concrete walls, a low ceiling, and ventilation pipes running along it. Metal shelves lined the walls. On the shelves were boxes, cans, and fuel containers, all covered in dust and cobwebs. In the center of the room stood a table, 2 chairs, a small camping stove, and several flashlight batteries. On the table lay papers, a pen, and a notebook. And something else. A generator. A small gasoline-powered generator stood in the corner, with fuel canisters beside it. Tennyson moved farther inside. On the opposite side of the room was another door, also metal but smaller, with a latch on the outside. The latch was already slid into place. He pulled the latch back. The door opened inward. And then he saw her. A woman. She was sitting on the floor against the back wall, her back pressed to the concrete, her legs stretched out in front of her, her hands resting on her knees. She was alive, but she looked like a ghost. Her skin was pale, almost gray. Her hair was long, matted, and filthy. Her face was thin, her cheekbones sharply protruding. Her eyes were wide open, but her gaze was empty. She looked at Tennyson, but she did not move. She did not even blink. She was wearing a dirty t-shirt and sweatpants. She was barefoot. There were shackles on her right ankle. A thick metal chain, about 2 meters long, was fastened to a pipe running along the wall. A smell hung in the room, a strong, unbearable smell. The odor of an unwashed body, urine, and decay. Tennyson froze. For several seconds, he simply stood there, unable to understand what to do. Then he slowly stepped closer. He crouched down a few meters away and spoke quietly. "Hey, can you hear me?" The woman flinched violently. She recoiled toward the wall, pressing her back against it. She raised her hands and covered her face. She was shaking. Tennyson raised his hands to show that he was unarmed. "It is okay. I am not going to hurt you. My name is Mark. I am going to get you out of here." The woman did not respond. She continued to tremble. Tennyson pulled out his phone. There was no signal. The concrete walls blocked it completely. He quickly climbed back up to the hatch. On the surface, he had 1 bar of reception. He dialed 911. After 3 rings, the dispatcher answered. "Emergency services. How can I help you?" "I need the police and an ambulance. Immediately. I have found a woman. She is being held captive. She is alive, but she needs help." He gave the coordinates as accurately as he could, described the location, the distance from the main road, and nearby landmarks. The dispatcher said that a team was being sent immediately. Tennyson returned to the bunker. The woman was still sitting against the wall. He took water from his bottle and handed it to her. "Here, drink." She looked at the bottle. Then she slowly, very slowly, reached out her hand. She took it, brought it to her mouth, and drank in small sips, as if she was afraid the water would be taken away from her. Tennyson sat down on the floor across from her. He spoke calmly and quietly. "What is your name?" There was a long pause. Then the woman opened her mouth. Her voice was hoarse and broken. "Lauren." Another pause. "I am from Richmond." The sheriff and his deputy arrived first. 20 minutes later, an ambulance and 2 additional patrol cars arrived. Then firefighters came with hydraulic cutters to break the chain. Lauren was carried out on a stretcher. She was conscious, but barely reacted to what was happening. She did not speak. She did not cry. She simply stared at the sky. For the first time in 3 years, she saw the sun. At the hospital, she was examined by an entire team of doctors. The results were alarming. Her weight was 38 kilograms. At a height of 165 centimeters, this indicated critical malnutrition. Her body mass index was 14, while any value below 16 is considered life-threatening. She had severe muscle atrophy, especially in her legs. Lauren could barely walk. The muscles had wasted away due to prolonged lack of movement. There were numerous old fractures. 2 ribs that had healed incorrectly. A fracture of the left collarbone. A fracture of the little finger on her right hand. Scars on her wrists and ankles, consistent with restraints. The skin in those areas was worn down to raw tissue. She suffered from vitamin D deficiency, a sign of prolonged lack of sunlight, anemia, dehydration, and severe dental problems, including cavities and inflamed gums. Her psychological condition was even worse. Lauren could not speak coherently. She answered questions with single words or remained silent. She was afraid of loud noises. When a door slammed or someone raised their voice suddenly, she flinched and covered her head with her hands. She could not make eye contact. She trembled constantly. Doctors diagnosed her with acute post-traumatic stress disorder, severe deprivation, and signs of long-term psychological abuse. The hospital's chief psychiatrist, Dr. Emily Grant, a woman in her early 50s with gray hair and tired eyes, said at a press conference, "This condition is typical of people who have been held captive for a long time without sunlight and without normal human interaction. These are classic signs of isolation and deprivation. Recovery will take time." The bunker was examined by a criminal investigation team from Charleston. They worked there for 3 days. They photographed every centimeter and collected all evidence. The bunker had been built in the 1950s. It was one of hundreds of similar facilities constructed across the country during the Cold War. Officially, it was closed in the 1970s. The records were poorly preserved, and its exact location did not appear on any modern map. Inside, they found food supplies, canned goods, dry rations, crackers. Most were expired, but still edible. Water canisters, 20 liters. A generator with fuel. Lamps and batteries. On the shelves were blankets, clothing, and hygiene items. Soap, toothpaste, toilet paper. There were also medications, antibiotics, painkillers, bandages, syringes, and empty ampoules. In the main room, they found magazines and ordinary school notebooks filled with handwritten notes. The handwriting was male, small, and neat. The entries were strange. Dates, times, and short notes. Experts identified the person responsible through handwriting analysis and fingerprints. Gerald Matthews, 52 years old, a former electrician from the town of Elkins, 30 kilometers from the crime scene. He had a criminal record. In 1996, he was charged with assault against a woman. He attacked a tourist in a parking lot near a campground and attempted to drag her into his car. The victim resisted, and he fled. He received 3 years of probation and was ordered to undergo mandatory psychiatric treatment. The treatment was carried out formally. Supervision ended in 2001. Since 2002, Matthews had been living alone in a trailer outside the city. He worked only occasionally, surviving on odd jobs. Neighbors described him as quiet, withdrawn, and strange. He had no friends and no social connections. The investigation revealed the following. Matthews knew about the bunker. It is possible that he had worked at a military site in his youth or learned about it from someone else. He found the entrance and made the bunker operational. He brought supplies there and prepared it as a refuge. Then he began watching tourists on the Appalachian Trail. He selected women who were hiking alone. He studied their routes and waited for the right moment. Lauren Parks was not his first attempt, but she may have been his first successful one. On July 11, 2010, he attacked her on the trail. The exact details remain unclear. He may have approached her under the pretense of being lost and asked for help, or he may have attacked her from behind and rendered her unconscious. Lauren could not remember the details. Her memory had blocked the traumatic event. He brought her to the bunker. How he did so remains unknown. Possibly by car, using an old forest road that leads fairly close to the site, or he carried her himself. The distance was not great, approximately 2 kilometers. He discarded Lauren's backpack to complicate the search. He turned off her phone and scattered her belongings. Inside the bunker, he kept her chained. He gave her only the bare minimum of food, just enough to keep her alive, but not enough to allow her to resist. At times, he gave her sleeping pills or sedatives. Empty ampoules were found among the trash. According to medical findings, there was no evidence of sexual violence. Psychological violence, however, was constant. Isolation, threats, punishment, and control. Matthews kept journals. He documented everything. This was his form of control. He wanted to record his power. In April 2012, Matthews disappeared. His body was found in June of the same year inside his trailer. The cause of death was a stroke. The estimated time of death was determined to be late April or early May. After his death, Lauren was left alone, locked inside the bunker, chained, with limited supplies of food and water. She lived that way for more than a year. Lauren did not begin speaking until 3 weeks after her rescue. At first, only single words, then short sentences. Psychologists worked with her daily, very carefully. She described what she could remember. The first weeks were the worst. She screamed, tried to break free, and struck the walls. Matthews came rarely, every 2 or 3 days. He brought food, changed the water, and removed waste. He almost never spoke. If she tried to escape or strike him, he would simply leave and deny her food for a day, sometimes for 2. Lauren quickly understood that resistance was useless. Gradually, she gave up hope. She stopped counting the days. She simply existed. She slept and ate when she was given something. The rest of the time, she sat against the wall and stared into the darkness. Time lost all meaning. Days blended into a single gray blur. There were no windows, no clocks, only a lamp that Matthews turned on when he came. Then he turned it off and left. She tried to think about her parents, her friends, her home. Slowly, those images faded. Reality shrank to the size of the room, to the chain on her ankle, to the sound of footsteps in the corridor. Then Matthews stopped coming. Lauren did not know how much time had passed. Maybe a day, maybe 2. She waited. Then she realized her supplies were running out. She had water for about a week. She began rationing. She drank only a few sips per day. She ate 1 can of food every 2 days. The water ran out first. Lauren began drinking condensation that collected on the pipes. Cold drops. Dirty, but liquid. The food was gone after a few weeks. She did not know exactly when. Then there was only hunger. Constant, crushing, maddening hunger. Lauren lay on the floor and did not move. She had no strength left, only thirst and pain in her stomach. She thought she was going to die. She wanted to die, to simply close her eyes and never open them again. But her body kept going. After some time, Matthews returned. He brought food and water. Lauren lunged at the can of stew, eating with her hands and choking. He no longer kept records. He came less often. He looked sick, pale, exhausted. He said something about an illness, about a hospital. Lauren did not listen anymore. She only waited for the food. Then he did not come back again. This time, forever. Lauren did not know how much time had passed. Weeks, months, everything blended together. She stopped counting. She simply waited. Sometimes she heard sounds from above. Wind, rain, birds. Very distant, almost unreal. At times, it felt as if she was imagining them. She stopped speaking out loud. Her throat was dry. Her voice was gone. When Tennyson arrived, Lauren first thought it was a hallucination or that Matthews had returned. She did not understand what was happening until they brought her to the surface. The light was unbearable. The air was too fresh. Everything felt unreal. Public opinion was divided. Some demanded an investigation into why the search had been stopped so quickly, why the bunker had not been found, and why Matthews had been overlooked. Others said, tourists are to blame themselves. People should not go into the forest alone. The authorities launched an internal review. They examined every step of the search operation. The conclusion was as follows. The operation was conducted in accordance with protocol. All available resources were used. The bunker was located outside the designated search area. The entrance was concealed. There were no records of its existence. No one will be disciplined. No one will be held responsible. Sergeant Holmes retired 6 months later. At his farewell dinner, he said to his colleagues, "I see her face every night, and I cannot forget that she was there, 2 kilometers away, and we walked right past her." Mark Tennyson was honored. The governor of West Virginia awarded him a medal for civilian courage. Lauren's parents offered him a reward of $100,000. He refused. In an interview with a local newspaper, Tennyson said, "I was simply in the right place at the right time. Anyone would have done the same. The only thing that matters is that she is alive." Lauren spent 4 months in the hospital. Her physical recovery was slow but steady. Her weight gradually increased. Her muscles returned. Her fractures healed. Her psychological recovery was more difficult. During the first months, she barely spoke. She sat in her room and stared out the window. She was afraid to go outside. She was afraid of strangers. She was afraid of the dark. She asked for the light to remain on all night. Gradually, very slowly, she began to come back. Psychologists worked with her every day. Her parents visited daily. Friends wrote her letters. 1 year later, Lauren gave her first interview. The journalist from the Washington Post, a woman in her 40s, was calm and tactful. The conversation was recorded, but most of it was never published. It was too difficult. Lauren said, "I thought no one was looking for me. I was just waiting for the end. Every day I thought, today is probably the last day. But my body did not want to die. It kept breathing. My heart kept beating. And now I am here. I am alive. I do not know why. I do not know what to do with it.